Okay, so we are still talking about exponential equations, but now we're going to be talking about from word problems, how do you write an equation? Instead of writing it from a graph or a table, how do you write it from a word problem? So we know you're still going to need the y-intercept, and we know that number is still going to go outside. And we know that the y-intercept, what words mean y-intercept? Well, it's talking about the starting number, or that's a comma, beginning, or the initial. We remember that fancy word, initial. Did I spell that right? There we go. Okay. So if it's talking about any of those things, then that's how I know what the y-intercept number is, and we know that that still goes on the outside of the parentheses. The inside, we know, is still the rate, and the rate is how the numbers change. And we'll probably be talking about like each year, most likely. Now, when they tell us this, they can tell it to us as like, oh, it's going to double every year, or it's going to triple every year, or it's going to half every year. And so we would just use, oh, double means 2, triple means 3, half means a half. They could also be telling us a percent. So we got to talk about, what do we do if it's a percent? Well, if it's a percent, we're going to change it to a decimal, and then depending on whether they say it's increasing, we're going to do 1 plus that decimal. If it says it's decreasing by a percent, then you're going to do 1 minus that decimal. So first of all, we got to talk about, well, how do you make a percent into a decimal? So we know to change a percent to a decimal, we're going to put our decimal point. Where do I put it? Well, if it's not already written there, like in 5.2, there's already a decimal. But in 3%, I don't see a decimal. So where do I put it? Well, I'm going to put it on my percent sign. That's how I know where to put it. And then you are going to move that decimal 2 spaces to the left. So I start here and I go 1, 2 spaces. And now that's where it is. What do I put in this blank spot? I'm going to put a 0. So 3% as a decimal is going to be 0.03. Okay, let's try the next one. So 5.2%. Oh, we said there's already a decimal there, so I start where it already is. I move 1, 2 to the left, and now that is where the decimal is. In my blank spot, I put a 0. So now that's going to be 0.052. Okay. For 80% and 140, you could try this by yourself, so go ahead, pause the video, do it, and then check. Okay, so I put my decimal on the percent because there's not already 1 there. I move 1, 2 spaces, so 80% turns into 0.80 or 0.8. You don't have to put a 0 at the end. And the last one, 140%, well, we put our decimal there. We move 1, 2, is going to turn that into 1.4. Okay, so just so we all remember how to change a percent into a decimal. Now, how am I going to know if I'm supposed to do increase or decrease? So if we're talking about that it's going up, then I'm checking. It's going to say, oh, it grew by this percent, or it increased by this percent. Or a special one, they could say, oh, the interest rate is this percent. So you would change it to a decimal and then do 1 plus the decimal. Okay. If it says any of these words over here, if it's talking about, oh, it decreased by this percent, or it decayed by this percent, or a decline, or you lost money by this percent, then that's going to be going down. And instead of doing 1 plus, we're going to do 1 minus the decimal. So with all this in mind, let's actually try a question. So it says Malcolm deposited $10,000 into an account that increases by 5.2% each year. It says what function represents this situation? Well, we're going to do our exponential. So I need to know y-intercept and I need to know rate. So my y-intercept, I'm looking for where is the beginning number? How much money did he start with? Well, that's why it says deposits. Deposits, $10,000. That's going to be my y-intercept. Okay. Now my rate, I'm looking for how is it changing? Well, it says it's changing because it's increasing 5.2%. Since it's a percent, I need to change it to a decimal. Okay, now how are we going to do that? Well, we just talked about it. So I have 5.2. I move it 2 spaces to the left. So now that's 0.052. And I got to decide, am I supposed to do 1 plus the decimal or 1 minus the decimal? It said increases. So if I look back at my words, increases means I'm supposed to do 1 plus. So I'm going to do 1 plus 0.052. I would type that in the calculator and it would tell me 1.052. That is my rate. So final answer, I'm putting y equals, my y-intercept we said was 10,000, so I'm putting 10,000. Don't worry about putting the comma, you don't have to put the comma. Parentheses, my rate we just figured out was 1.052 to the x power. So that's going to be my function. That means my equation. That's the answer. The second part, when it says how much money will there be in the account after 7 years? So what am I supposed to do now? Well, now I have my equation. So I'm going to type the equation in Desmos. And then I'm going to look at the table. Okay. So let's pull up Desmos. So I'm going to type in here, we got y equals 10,000. Make sure you put the right number of zeros. 1.052 to the x power. To get a little x, we're pushing shift 6 x. And you may be looking at your graph like, I don't see anything. But since it's lit up red over there and it's not like the triangle with the exclamation mark in it, I know it's good. So to get the table, we push the wheel. I push the picture of the table. So here's a table. Great. What do I want to know from this table? I want to see 7 years. So I'm looking at the table and I'm going to type in 7 because it said 7 years. So I'm typing in 7. So over here in the X, I'm typing a 7. And what did it say over here? Because that is what I'm going to write as my answer. 14,259.693. So I'm going to round that. The 3 does not make 9 bigger, so just 0.69. So final answer. After 7 years, there's going to be, what did we say? 14. I forget. 259.69. There we go. Okay. So if it just asked how much money, you would have to write your equation and then type it in the table. But since I already had the equation, it was super easy. Let's look at the other word problem. The other word problem says, new color, says the number of rabbits at a farm doubles every year. Currently, there are 24 rabbits. What function model? So, AKA, write an equation. So we're doing the same thing. I need to know y, the y-intercept, and the rate to the x power. Okay, so I'm looking for my y-intercept. That's my starting number. So what did they say? What number of rabbits are we starting at? It says currently there's 24 rabbits. So that's going to be my y-intercept. Okay. And my rate, how are my numbers changing every year? Well, it says the number of rabbits is going to doubles every year. Is that a percent? No. So it's not a percent. So don't make it a decimal. Decimal spelling is hard. Okay. So what number am I going to use for the rate then? Well, what number does double mean? Well, double means 2. So that means my rate is just 2. I'm not changing it like I did over here where I had to do, oh, make it a decimal and 1 plus. No, just the rate is 2. So I know my rate, I know my y-intercept, so I can just write my equation. So y equals my y-intercept, number of rabbits was 24. Parentheses, my rate, how it changes every year, was 2 to the x power. Okay. So it says, what will the population be after 4 years? So I have my equation. I'm going to do the same thing I just did over here. I'm going to type the equation into decimals. I'm going to look at the table. What number am I looking for this time? I'm looking for 4. So look at 4 in the table. So I'm going to decimals. And I'm just going to type it up here since I already have the table up. Okay, so I have y equals, what did we say, 24, parentheses 2 to the x power. Does it not want y equals? I guess we don't have to say y. There we go. Okay. So there's my equation. And this time I can see a graph. Oh, good. Because the numbers on this one are smaller than the numbers on the last one where they were talking about 10,000. So what number did we want to look up? We want to look up 4 years. So we're typing 4. And the y number was 384. So that's my answer, was 384 rabbits. Okay, if you need any extra help, go back, watch the video, but you can go ahead and get started with the formative.